What is up, people? Today I'm going to be showing you something very simple but I think very helpful for understanding the guitar a little bit better, knowing your way around the neck, knowing where a B flat is, where's F. We're going to answer it all right here and now, and we're going to start with a simple shape on the A string actually. I got the tabs on screen to help you out, but it's going to go 0, 2, 3, 5, 7, 8, 10, and 12. And I would play it in those three positions, kind of like I just did, to help kind of break it up. But yeah, essentially what we just learned is the alphabet. We got A, B, C. We got D, E, F. We got G back to A at the octave on the 12th fret, baby. What you're going to want to do is really familiarize yourself with this shape in a visual sense. Don't worry too much about the notes at first. Just get used to memorizing the shape. Guitar is a very shape-based instrument, and though we do want to learn theory and understand it in that way, it's really helpful to go by the visuals of guitar and by the shapes. So get really used to it, and then start quizzing yourself on where those notes are. I'm gonna do it right now. Pause the video after each question and see if you get it right. Where's G? 10th fret. Where's C? 3rd fret. Where's E? 7th fret. If you got all them right without cheating, then you're a pretty swell character. So next up we're going to be talking about something just as important as the natural notes, which is, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. We're going to be talking about the accidentals. These are the notes or the frets that are in between the frets that we just went over. So we played 0, 2, 3. What about the 1st fret? What's that one called? We played 5, 7, 8. But what about the 6th fret? What's that one called? To understand this, I want to talk about sharps and flats really quickly. When we sharp a note, let's say D, all that means is we're raising it by 1 fret. So if we play a D and we want to play a D sharp, we're going to find our D first and raise it up by a fret. That's all. If we want to flat that note, that's going to be the opposite. That's going to lower our notes. So if we wanted to play a D flat, we're going to again find that D, but now we're going to lower it, and the 4th fret would be called a D flat. This presents a little bit of an interesting problem where you can refer to this one fret with two different names. We could call this a D sharp because look, I took a D and I sharped it. Or we could call this an E flat because if I go to the 7th fret and play an E, and then I say to myself, let me play an E flat, I'm going to lower that E to the 6th fret. Well, this is the D sharp that I just played. It's both. That's the secret. Every accidental has two names. They're called enharmonic equivalents, by the way. Another thing to keep in mind is that there are two spots in that scale that I showed you where we have notes that are right next to each other. If we take a look at B and C on the 2nd and 3rd fret, we can see there's no fret in between there. If we take a look at E and F on the 7th and 8th fret, we can see there's no note in between those as well. So what this means, and this is a universal music rule, there is no E sharp or F flat. There is no B sharp or C flat. And for those of you that are music theory jazz nerds, I know it's not entirely true, but just forgive me for this one. So I know I'm kind of throwing a lot at you here, but basically there's a few things here just to review that you want to make sure you understand. You want to get your natural note shape feeling really good and comfy and memorized. You want to understand that every natural note except for B, C, and E, F has a note in between them that we use sharps or flats to name and identify. In addition to that, you just want to keep in mind that these accidental notes have two names. So as you're going about reading chord charts or whatever, you might see D flat, you might see C sharp. You want to be familiar with both names. That way you're like ready for whatever comes your way. You never know what people are going to use. It's just an unfortunate truth of learning music. And last but not least, I want to try and get this concept comfortable with you on the low E string. The only thing is we have to adjust two things. We need to, instead of playing the natural notes like this at the beginning, we need to play the 1st fret. Other than that, it's the same shape. So So again, that's 0, 1, 3, 5, 7, 8, 10, 12. And the reason for that change is because we're actually starting on the note E this time, which gets us E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E as our natural notes now. Yeah, you can see that the same laws still apply. So for instance, we have E and F are still a half step apart, B and C are still a half step apart. And again, that's going to apply on every instrument. That's just a musical foundational rule. In addition, we also have the accidentals here. So in between our F and G, for instance, we have the second fret. That's going to be either F sharp or G flat, depending on how you're feeling that day. Fourth fret is going to be G sharp or A flat, and so on and so forth. The same rules still apply to the E string. So with that, once you understand all of that, and you can apply it to both the E string and the A string, you now have a lot of power. You can read a chord chart, and if they say there's a D, you could, well, play a D on the 5th fret of the A string. Or maybe you could play a D on the 10th fret of the E string. And with either of those notes, you could turn it into a power chord. Or if you know your bar chords, you could turn it into a minor chord or a major chord. If you know your E string shapes, you can do the same thing as well. On the E string, you can start to string together chords by reading a chord chart. Somebody could just say, hey, can you play C to A flat? And you're going to kind of know what to do a lot easier if you can kind of understand how to find notes on these two strings. And I really think these are the main two that you want to get used to at first, because a lot of chords start with a root on those strings. But yeah, that about wraps it up for this lesson. We could obviously take this concept and apply it to all the strings and learn some other shapes and how to memorize some more complex structures and stuff. But I'll leave you guys with that. I think we got a lot to chew on here. So yeah, let me know what you want to see next, and I'll see you guys in the next lesson.